Johnny, it's also the first yacht site of Alan Marks today.
Is it really? Oh,
yes.
Okay. I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me that.
I don't know what his Hebrew name is. I've forgotten to be
I can't remember either, but that's good to know that it's his first yacht site. I'll send a message through to the family. By the way, just whilst we're talking about Alan, those of you who have been to the shul recently will have seen in the hall there are some new bookcases. That is going to be the Alan Marks Children's Library. We're going to fill those books with those bookcases with children's books. We're going to put some nice comfortable furniture for parents and children to sit on, and there's going to be a nice little dedication plaque in Alan's memory. Marilyn has sponsored that area in memory of Alan. So if it's his first yacht site today, we will we'll dedicate the shiur to his memory as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Johnny.
Thank you.
Right, we're in the Gemarah. We're on page 7a. Those of you who've got your Gemarahs in front of you, have you all got Gemarahs, by the way? If you have, I don't need to share the screen, but if you haven't, anybody that
we do not. We do not.
You do not.
Sharon
okay.
and Larry
So
don't.
I will share the screen. There we go. Can you see it, Sharon?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So we are in the middle of a bunch of sayings that the Gemarah is brought. We started these bunch of sayings because one of the sayings was to do with a verse in the Tanakh, which we had quoted, which was about releasing water. Poter mayim reshit madon. The release of water is the beginning of judgment, and we used that pasuk for all sorts of things, one of which was try not to have an argument, because if you have an argument, then it's going to get out of hand. Like water, where it's released, you just don't know where it's going to go. So that was how we started this whole business. And then we had a mnemonic to tell us, here it is, Shimi Oshti Sheva Zmirot Hava Siman. Siman. And we're going through this various series of sayings that Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda when he heard certain sayings. He said, oh, that reminds me of a verse in the Torah. And of course, Shmuel, who knew his Tanakh very well, was the kind of person that whatever you would say to him, he would find you a pasuk to follow it up. I remember seeing, I can't remember the title of the film now. I remember seeing an old American film about somewhere in the Bible Belt in the South. This old lady, whatever anybody said to her, she quoted a verse from scriptures, and that's this Shmuel chatting to Rav Yehuda. He quotes these verses, and there you can see where my pointer is. Poter mayim reshit madon. That was the first one, and that is why we went off at this tangent with the various sayings. And the one that we got to was, we were up to here. So, Hahu dahava ka'ama va'azil, there was this man walking along, and as he was walking along, he said, Da'azel mi beidina shkal glima, somebody who goes from the beidina, from the bet din, from the courthouse, shkal galima, and he has had his galima taken away from him. His galima is his cloak, his coat. And why has he had it taken away from him by the court? Because he's lost the case. And he he's lost the case, and all his money that he had has now had to be paid over to the winner of the court case. So he's had his cloak taken away from him. Now, this was an interesting expression to me, because it reminded me of two expressions. One was the expression, he's lost his shirt. Anybody heard that expression, to lose your shirt? Yeah, Leon, you're nodding, Leon. What do you understand by losing your shirt?
You've lost all your money, usually in a bet.
Okay.
Or a lot of bets.
A lot of bets, or an investment, in fact.
Yes, even.
So yes,
this was in a bet. This was in a bet din.
This was in a bet din, correct? Bet din, very good, Johnny. Very quick, well done. Okay, so this was so to lose one's shirt in English. I don't know if you have that expression. You definitely have that expression in America, to lose your shirt. And I'll show you why you have that expression in America. So it occurred to me that this is a similar expression to lose one's shirt. And so, being a bit obsessional about these things, I decided to look up the origins of the expression to lose one's shirt. And I don't know if you can see my screen now. Can you see my screen? Is it where it says, yes? Okay, so here's, according to Investopedia, the origins of losing your shirt is in the Wall Street crash of 1929. Its first use in America dates from around 1935, when many investors experienced this kind of devastating, life-altering loss. And losing one's shirt was the expression used first time in modern use in America in 1935. And again here, down here, it talks about strip poker, but we're not going to go into that. And it means that you've lost all your material belongings, even your shirt. So I found that quite interesting, that when I looked up the origins of that, they seem to think that was in 1935. Well, our Gemarah is talking about losing your cloak a lot earlier than 1935. So I think I need to write to Investopedia and correct them on that. Now, the word Gemarah, does anybody know where else we see that word Gemarah in popular use in Judaism? I guarantee you, I'm just looking around here. Yes, I guarantee you, you will all have heard this word at least once and probably many times. Any guesses where you can find this? Okay, no takers? Right, this is one that I didn't get ready, so just give me a few seconds where I find it. Here, can you see my screen? You'll find it in your ketubah. That's where you'll find it. Let's see if I can find a text of a ketubah. I read these things all the time. Oh, look at this. Conservative ketubah with a Lieberman clause. I wonder what the Lieberman clause is. The Lieberman clause is a codicil that was introduced by the conservative movement as an added protection for women entering marriage. This clause states that the husband cannot withhold a get if the marriage were to end. How interesting. That's called the Lieberman clause. I have to look into that. Anyway, let's have a look at the text of the ketubah. See if it comes up. Oh, what do we want? Let's have RCA Orthodox. Let's go for that. All right. Oh, this is all. I can't find it right now. Anyway, I'll find it for you. Anyway, in the ketubah, I'm looking around here, and I think that you are all or have been married, and therefore you will all have a ketubah. And in your ketubah, you will find that the wording in the ketubah says that you will look after your wife, even up to the glima. Exact words escape me. Glima me'al ktefa, something like that, which means even the glima off my shoulders, or as we would say in English, even up to the shirt on my back. Oh, there we are. Johnny's got his ketubah out there. See if you can find the word glima, Johnny. You'll find it about 2/3 of the way through. And you say in your, what you signed when you signed your ketubah is you signed that you would look after your wife and you would sustain her and give her sustenance. Ad glima me al ketefa, or words to that effect, up to and including the cloak off my shoulders. You found it, Johnny? We can't hear you. You're muted, Johnny.
Right, okay, v'totzvot da va'afilu min gelima dal kispa'ei b'chayei uvamotei.
There we go.
Min yoma danan.
There we go. So da'afilu, even, glima, the cloak. What's the next word?
Da'al, dalad ayin
Da'al,
lamed.
which is upon.
Kispei.
Kispei, my shoulders. Kispei, my shoulders. That's it. So glima, afilu, glima, da'al kispei, even the cloak on my shoulders, or in the English expression, even up to the shirt off my back. So those of you who've been unfortunate enough to go through a divorce will know about the shirt off your back in the ketubah. So I don't need to go into that in any great detail. But that is the expression. That is where our expression glima here is in popular usage in everyday Judaism. It's there in your ketubah, the glima. So here, what this fellow is saying is that a person who leaves the bet din, having lost the shirt off his back, in other words, he's lost the case and he's had to cough up all his money. It may even be a divorce case, and therefore that word glima might be part of the. It might have actually come from the ketubah. Either way, what our fellow is suggesting that once you've lost the case, lizmar zemer v'lezil be'orcha, he should sing a song and go merrily on his way. What a strange thing. You've just lost all your money. You've lost the shirt off your back. And he's suggesting that you should sing a song and be happy about it as you go on your way. And the reason, of course, is that you should be happy that justice has been done. Even though you have lost all your money, you should be happy that the halacha has been upheld. That's assuming that you're not going to appeal the case, but you're happy that the halacha has been upheld. And even though you've lost all your money, you should be happy about it. So you should go with a spring in your step, a song in your heart, and you should go merrily on your way. And Shmuel says to Rav Yehuda, Amalei Shmuel Rav Yehuda, Kraktiv. I've got a support for that. I know a pasuk which supports that. And let's have a look at our pasuk. I've got it ready for you. It's in Shemot. It's in the Parsha of Mishpatim. And here it is. It's talking about, oh no, I don't think it is in Mishpatim, is it, David? I think it's in Yitro. In Yitro, yes. This is Yitro himself suggesting the system to Moshe of setting up different levels of court. As you know, originally, Moshe was the one who sat there all day and everybody queued up forever to come and bring his cases. And Yitro said, nah, this is no good. You're going to wear yourself out and you're going to wear the people out. I'll tell you what to do. Make yourself a court. And here we go, verse 21. If you're with us, Leon, chapter 20, what is it? Chapter 18, verse 21.
23.
Yeah, go from 21.
Oh, right. And you shall discern from among the entire people men of accomplishment, God-fearing people, men of truth, people who despise money, and you shall appoint them leaders of thousands, leaders of hundreds, leaders of 50s, and leaders of 10s. They shall judge the people at all times. and they shall bring every major matter to you, and every minor matter they shall judge. That is, I should read that again. And they shall bring every major matter to you, and every minor matter they shall judge, and it will be eased for you, and they shall bear with you. If you do this thing, and God will command you, then you will be, excuse me, then you will be able to endure, and this entire people as well shall arrive at its destination in peace.
Okay, so Shmuel has said to Rav Yehuda, I've got a verse to support this idea that the person who's lost the case will go happily on his way, and he brings this verse, which I don't know about you, but I certainly never picked up on this until I read this Gemara. He says that if you do this thing, this is what the verse says. Yitro says to Moshe, if you do this, take my advice, set up this court system, everybody will have their court case heard by the appropriate level of court. And then he says, V'gam kol ha'am hazeh al makomo yavo v'shalom. All this people will come upon their place in peace. And what Shmuel is saying is
Johnny, sorry to interrupt. Can you let Howard in? He's been trying to get on and he can't get it.
He's in.
Good, thanks. Sorry.
Okay, so what Shmuel says is that he picks up on this word kol that I've highlighted there on the screen. Kol ha'am hazeh. All of this people will go to his place, meaning even the losers. So that's how Shmuel supports this fellow's saying that even if you've lost the shirt off your back in court, you should go merrily on your way because you should be happy that the court case justice has been done. And Shmuel, knowing the Tanakh very well, has picked up on this word, v'gam kol ha'am. We could have just said ha'am, in which case we would have said the winners will be happy and the losers will go home miserable. And he says, no, kol ha'am al makomo yavo v'shalom. All the people will go to their place, i.e. they'll go home from the court case v'shalom, in peace. So that's the saying from Shmuel. If justice is served, all the litigants, not only those who emerge victorious, can leave in peace. So that was the next saying. Let's move on to, yes, David.
Yeah, just on the word glima, I just found in another source, Gemarah in Shabbat, it asks why is an overcoat called glima? Shenaseh bo kagolem. Okay, golem is a word that we're obviously familiar with. And a golem, according to Rashi here, is a shapeless form. So it's a cloak without any sleeves to make the one that was wearing it look like they were shapeless, kagolem.
How interesting. So the golem that you're referring to in a more familiar pronunciation to us, the golem of Prague. By the way, I went to see the golem of Prague when I was in Prague. I don't know if any of you have been to Prague. If you go to the Altneu Schule, you can pay some golem there to take you up into the rafters there, where the golem is meant to live, and you'll see it. I actually went to see the golem of Prague. My son was studying in Prague, and I used to call him the golem of Prague. It's not a very nice expression, the golem, because it means it's come to mean the sort of a bit of a dummy, a bit of an idiot. If you call somebody a golem, it means you're a bit of a dummy. But it's interesting. It was the golem of Prague was this mythical figure, which was made, and the reason it's called the golem, as David has said there, is because it was a bit ghost-like. It wasn't a real thing. Somebody made this golem, and it had no shape, and it was all a bit sort of blurry and shapeless, and that's where the word golem. So David is telling us that the word glima comes because it's on the shoulders. As we said in the ketubah, just before Howard is nodding, I think just before you joined, we spoke about the glima de'al ktefai, the coat upon my shoulders, which you will have signed on your ketubah. I'm sure that you, Howard, will have read it, your ketubah, very, very carefully, and before you signed it, and made sure that you consented to everything in there. And you will have written, you will have signed that you would hand over even the glima from on your shoulders. Yes, Marcel?
Just a very small thing when you spoke about that shul in Prague. The most interesting thing there is that where the Amud is, where the Shliach Tzibor stands, the floor is lowered about a meter, a square meter is lowered about 75, 3 inches or 4 inches, not even 4, about 3 inches lower than the main floor. So
yes, it is. It's a sunken Amud, and do you know the reason for that?
So you should be humble.
Hashem.
Yes, exactly. The reason is that from Tehillim, where we say, "From the depths I called out to you, Hashem." So the idea is that when the Shliach Tzibor is davening on behalf of the community, he is lower than the community, so he can say, "Mimamakim karaticha Hashem." From the depths I can call you. So it's a deliberate thing. It wasn't just a building error. It was a deliberate thing, so that, and in fact, if you go to the Altneu Shul, there is that Tehillim there on the wall. That Tehillim Mimamakim Karaticha Hashem is on the wall there in that the Altneu Shul.
And the Altneu is actually Altnai, not Old New. Old New is a mistake. It's Altnai.
Correct, which means
on condition. On
condition. That's right. So. It's one of those words which has been bastardized, really, and Altanai has become Altneu, which is German for old new. Correct. Okay, very good. There we go. We've gone off on a few tangents there, which are all very, very interesting tangents. Any more tangents before we go on?
Do you want to say anything more about Al Makomo Yovo Shalom? The other usage we have for it today, which is totally different from the pasuk.
Okay, so let's go to the pasuk and look at the actual words. Where are we here? So, there we go. Yes. So al makomo yavo v'shalom. What David is referring to there is to his place he should come b'shalom, in peace. When do we say to or about a person that he should go lech b'shalom? When do we say that? Anybody know? When do we say to a person or about a person lech b'shalom? David?
The actual words are quoted in the Levaya.
Yeah, it's when he's dead. We say to this al makomo, to his place, yavo b'shalom. He should come b'shalom, in peace. So lech b'shalom, you would say, as it were, is the last thing you would say to a person at a levaya. You say to the dead person, lech b'shalom, go in peace. Now, you've got to be very careful in Hebrew, because I personally made this mistake because I was speaking to Herzl Cherkassky, who many of you will know from our Kehillah. Herzl is a real character, as those of you who know him will know. And he was once going somewhere, and I said to him, Lech b'shalom. And that was not the right thing to do. What I should have said was Lech l'shalom, which means go and then come back, go and come back safely. But I didn't. I got mixed up, and I said lech b'shalom, which is what you say to a dead person. So you've got to be a little bit careful when you try and be clever and use Hebrew expressions. You've got to be very exact, because otherwise you can upset him. Just as another, by the way, this also happened to Herzl. I don't know why it always happens to him. My son-in-law, whose Hebrew is not actually that perfect, but he tries very, very hard. We went to Herzl's 80th birthday party, and he wanted to say to him, I wish you another 40 years, so that he would be to 120. So that's what you say to somebody, ad mea ve'esrim. So he thought he'd be clever, and he wished him another 40 years. But instead of saying od arba'im shana, he said od arba'im sha'a, which means another 40 hours. He wished him another 40 hours of life instead of another 40 years of life. So again, you've got to be a little bit careful when you're using expressions in a language that you're not that familiar with. Od arba'im shana would have been more appropriate than od arba'im sha'a. Okay, so yeah, that's lech b'shalom. Al makomo yavo b'shalom is what you say at a levaya. Not sure how it's connected with the legal system here of Yitro. David, you any idea?
No, that was my question to you, Johnny. I don't know either.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I would say that sometimes, you know, if you go to a court case and you lose, it probably feel like a funeral. I don't know, but, but it's interesting that the expression al makomo yavo v'shalom is now used at a levaya. Correct. Okay. Very interesting. So we've managed to go off at loads of tangents there just on our first one of our expressions. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is this. Our fellow was walking along, and he said like this: He naima v'dikula shafel. If a woman is dozing, falling asleep, the reed basket will fall off. And Rav Steinsaltz has given us a nice picture here of a woman carrying a reed basket. That's how they carried their goods, and still do in some places in the world. And it's called, by the way, it's called a dikula. Why is it called a dikula? Where is it? Over here, yes. Why is this basket called a dikula? What's the root of that word? Anybody?
Is it anything to do with Pharaoh's daughter?
Pharaoh...
Was she called Dikla? No,
she was called
Batya. Dikla's another name.
Or Batya. Okay, it comes from what it was made from. It was made from palm tree leaves. And the word for a palm tree, Marcel, I can see you mouthing it, is dekel. The word for a palm tree is dekel. So dikula is this basket thing made from reeds. I think Rav Steinsaltz mentions that in his background there, wherever it is. I can't just see it now. He's got a little B. Here we go. Reed basket, dikula. The Gemarah is describing a basket that women were accustomed to carry on their heads. Since the baskets were typically woven of palm leaves, they were given the name dikula, a derivative of the term palm dekel. Okay, so that's why it's called dikula. And the guy was saying that if this woman falls asleep, then obviously she dozes off, then it's going to fall off, isn't it? You know, you sit there, many of them, I'm sure you've been in meetings when you know, your head drops like that, and you fall asleep because you doze off, or you're watching the telly and your head falls to one side. Well, imagine you had one of these on your head, it's going to fall off. So what he's basically saying, this fellow, is explained to us by Shmuel. Shmuel says, Kroktiv, I've got a verse that supports that. And he quotes a verse from Kohelet. He quotes a verse from Kohelet. Let's have a look at Kohelet. Here we are. The verse is verse 18 in chapter 10, I think. Is it chapter 10? Let's have a look. Chapter 10, verse 18. I've got it there on the screen. It says, Ba'atzaltayim yimach hamakara, ubeshiflut yadayim yidlof habayit. That's a very apropos for today's lovely weather around here. it says through laziness. But atzaltin, somebody who is lazy in modern Hebrew is called an atzlan. An atzlan, from this word atzlatin. With laziness, yimach hamakara. Hamakara. This is the same word that we use in modern Hebrew for the ceiling. What's the word for ceiling? Marcel, what's the word for ceiling?
Ritzpah. Ritzpah.
Ritzpah is the floor, Leon. Ritzpah is the floor.
Tikra.
Tikra. That's right. Tikra is the roof.
And krashim are planks.
Krashim are the boards or the planks. But mikra here, makare, is the same word as tikra, the roof, the ceiling, I should say. So if you're lazy, then your roof, your rafters will sink. And if you're b'shiflut yadayim, and if your hands are idle, yidlof habayit, the house will leak.
Can I register an objection to this? In the absence of your friend Helen, I cannot see the relevance of laziness to a poor woman who's overworked falling asleep. I think it's astonishing.
Okay, we're coming to it, Julia. You've preempted me. Hang on for a sec, because we are actually coming to that. It's a shame. Well, Helen doesn't come to our share, but maybe I'll send her a little clip of the recording for this, because she'll definitely like to hear it, and definitely like to hear you supporting her cause. But we'll come to it in a sec, Julia. I can't see you, by the way. You've got your camera off. So, Shmuel, who, there we go, there we can see Julia now. So Shmuel quotes our verse that says, if you're lazy, the house will fall in, the ceiling will fall in, and the house will leak. And Rashi, I've got Rashi here on the screen for you. You might not be able to see it because it's quite small. Rashi says, when a person is lazy and does not repair a small breach in the ceiling of the house, then the structure that covers the house and protects it will sink. We would say the English expression, a stitch in time saves nine. So in other words, you've got a little hole in the roof, fix it, don't leave it, because if you leave it, the water will get in and eventually your roof will fall in. And saying that if you're lazy and you don't bother to do that, then that's what will happen. And then he goes on to explain the second half of the pasuk. With idleness of the hand, the house leaks, the dripping rain drips. And then he says, Rashi says, what's that got to do with us? What is it that Shlomo HaMelech in Kohelet is trying to tell us? And Rashi says that when the Israelites are lazy with the Torah, they melt, i.e. they are defeated. And the house of their pride and their strength, i.e. the Bet HaMikdash, becomes destroyed and impoverished. So Rashi says that this pasuk is that laziness will lead to the house falling in, is a warning to Bnei Yisrael not to be lazy about their performance of mitzvot, their learning of Torah, and their general behavior should not be lazy. Slothfulness is a bad midah. So that's what Shmuel quotes this pasuk. And as Julia points out, this doesn't seem to refer to the woman carrying this basket on her head. Let's have a look at her. There she is, Nebuch. She's overworked and she dozes off because she's exhausted. So it's clear that in Shmuel's time here, the women were the main carriers of these things, and we know that also from the Torah itself. We know from the story of the various stories at the wells of where most of our menfolk of our ancestors found their shidduch at a well. Why did they go to the well? They went to the well because that's where the birds hung out, right? And why did the birds hang out at the well? Because they had to schlep all the water. And look what Eliezer says to Rivka or what he expects Rivka to do. He shows up with a bunch of thirsty camels, and he expects some girl to come along and schlep water up for him from the well, and to give him water to drink, and to give his camels to drink as well. So this is a demonstration, I think, of the times. It's a demonstration that at that time, when the Torah was written, and we all say that the Torah is written in Lashon B'nai Adam, it's written in words that we could understand, and that they could understand at the time. And the Gemarah is the same. At the time of the Gemarah, no doubt, it was the women that were schlepping all these things, and that's why Shmuel said that. Thankfully, in our society, we don't have so much women schlepping things these days. Chivalry still exists, and men tend to do a lot of the schlepping. But I don't have to tell you that there are lots of cultures still where women do schlep the water still on their head in a jug, and schlep things on their heads like this. So even in the 21st century, this Gemarah can be understood by us. But Julia's point is definitely something that we would find a little bit difficult today in modern Western society. Leon's got his hands up. Yes, Leon.
Just a small point. I thought there might have been a misprint in the art scroll. The word etc. in modern Hebrew, is it not vav kaf chubchik? Because here it's vav gimel chubchik.
Okay, so you're right. It is, and you're wrong. It's not a misprint, because there are two ways of doing it. So in modern Hebrew, we would put vav, kaf, vav, chubchik, which stands for v'chula, and all of it. So, and the rest of it, okay, etc. In biblical or Talmudic Hebrew, we use vav gimel, vav chubchik, which stands for v'gomer, from the word to finish.
Finish.
Yeah, to finish. So it's the same idea. So v'chula, 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 v'chula. You'll hear people say that when they want to say etc., etc., etc. You'll hear it in Hebrew. They say v'chula, 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 v'chula. It means and the rest of it. In biblical Hebrew, Talmudic Hebrew, it's v'gomer, and you will finish it. So here, it's good that you pointed that out, because it says here, it's an expression that we have, that I've explained to you before, that the Gemarah just gives us the first half of the pasuk and says v'gomer, finish it off. You're meant to finish it off yourself. We're very lucky, because we can just flick from screen to screen, and I can put up for you the whole pasuk, which I have got from a website which gives me that whole pasuk. I don't even need to go and get my books out, but they didn't even have books to get out. So when it says v'gomer, they're telling you in your head, finish off the pasuk. So you're right, Leon. In modern Hebrew, we use v'chula, and in Talmudic Hebrew, we use v'gomer. Okay.
Julia's fortunate the woman's face hasn't been obliterated in the picture.
That's why it's not in the art scroll, Johnny.
Yeah.
It's in the Steinsaltz, not in the art scroll.
I know.
Yeah, what are you saying, Julia? Unmute us, Julia. Unmute and tell us.
No, I actually didn't think that was funny. Sorry. And I also...
It's not funny. You're right, it's not funny. It's very sad.
I also don't quite understand the relevance, but I admit I was late coming in, of that message to our legal statements. The others all seem to have a legal message, but this is to do with not following the Torah, but it's not specifically. Oh, sugar, there's somebody at the door and I've got to go. Sorry.
Okay, well, I'll answer the question and then you can listen to it on the recording. So the answer to Julia's question is what we said earlier on, and that is that we've gone off at a tangent, basically. We started off with sayings that we were familiar with, our famous one, Poter Mayim Reshit Madon. That was a saying that this fellow, maybe it was the same fellow each time, maybe it wasn't, but that was the saying that he said as he was walking along. So while we were at it, we said a whole bunch of other sayings that people said, and that there were psukim to support. So that's the answer to Julia's question. That she's right. It's nothing to do with our Gemara. We've gone off at a tangent. So any more comments on our lady with the basket before we go on to the next saying? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Hahu dahava ka'ama va'azel. A man walked into a bar and said, this is the same thing as Leon pointed that out earlier on. That's how we start loads of jokes. Here, there was a certain man who was walking along, and this is what he said. Gavra derichitzna alei adye ligzizei vakam. The man upon whom I relied has lifted his fist and stood against me. So what do we understand by that? Rav Steinsaltz tells us this word geziza. Some suggest that the origin of this word is the Greek gesos, meaning a spear. Geziza. The only Hebrew word I know which sounds like that is anyone? Go on, Marcel.
Gazlan.
Gazlan, I think we need a lamed in. I think Gezel, I think we need a lamed in it.
Gazlan is somebody who steals with a weapon.
That's right. Now, a Gazlan is a robber as opposed to a thief, somebody who steals openly. But the root of that is Gimel Zayin Lamed, Gezel. So we need a lamed in it, and we haven't got one here. This is Gimel Zayin Zayin, Geziza. Any other suggestions for Geziza? You might know it from Hilchot Shabbat. David?
In Parashat Vayeshev, Al Gozazei Tzono.
Perfect. Thank you. Which means?
Sheep shearers.
Correct. Sheep shearing. Geziza in Hebrew is to shear, a sheep shearing. So when you go, you've probably seen it on the telly, or you've maybe seen it in person, where these guys go with a big razor and they shave this whole woolly coat off. That's called geziza, shearing. And we find it in Hilchot Shabbat because it's one of the Av Malachot of Shabbat. You're not allowed to sheep shear. Well, you're going to say, well, why on earth would I want to sheep shear? Well, you wouldn't. But one of the toledot, one of the subcategories of geziza, well, if you're like me, you wouldn't want to do this either. But if you were like Jeffrey, you would definitely want to do this, and you'd have to be very careful. And that is brushing your hair, because when you brush your hair, not that that's something that I've actually ever done in my entire life, as far as I can recall, not since I was a teenager and I tried to straighten my curls. But if you do use a brush, you'll find that you actually take some hairs out. Every time you brush your hair, you take hairs out. You take a brand new hairbrush and then use it. You're bound to take out a few hairs. And there are some rabbis who say that it is forbidden to use a hairbrush on Shabbat because it is a psikresha, it's an inevitability that you're going to pull out hairs. And therefore you have been over, you've got transgressed the malacha of geziza, of shearing. It's as if you've sheared your skin. So the word geziza, the only word I know of geziza is from Al Gozazeitzon, shearing sheep, which we find in Hilchot Shabbat. I am struggling to bring this together with this expression, fist or spear, and maybe that's why Steinsaltz tells us that it's suggested that this is actually not a Hebrew word at all. It comes from the Greek word, because if it was a Hebrew word, we'd have to find some kind of connection, because the root is obviously exactly, pardon the pun, but the root is obviously connected to this word geziza. So what's it all about, this verse? Shmuel will tell us, and he says, I've got a verse for you that supports this, and he refers us to Tehillim, chapter 41. Let me get it on the screen for you. Chapter 41 of Tehillim. I got it ready earlier on. There it is. And the verse says, Gam ish shlomi asher batachti bo ochel lachmi higdil alai akev. Even my ally, ish shlomi, from the word shalom, a person who's at peace with me, even my friend, asher batachti bo, upon whom I relied, I trusted, from the same word as betach, or bitachon, or bituach. All of those words are the same root. They've got security in them. I relied on this fellow. I trusted him. And what did he do? Ochel lachmi. He ate my bread. I even gave him hospitality in my house. I gave him food to eat. That's what a good friend he was. And what did he do? Higdil alai akev. And here it's translated as ambush. How is it translated in Art Scroll, please, Leon? Chapter 41, verse 10 of Tehillim.
Yes. He raised his heel to trample me.
He raised his heel, from the word akev. Now, where do we see that word akev, meaning heel? You all know that.
Yaakov.
Yaakov, Nachon, Yaakov. Yaakov is called Yaakov because when he was born, he came out of the womb clutching the heel, the akev of Esav. And then later on, we see the negative connotations of the word akev and negative connotations of the name Yaakov, because Esav says after Yaakov has taken the bracha that he was meant to get from his father, he says, Yaakveinu ze pa'amayim, or words to that effect. Is that correct, David? Yaakveinu ze pa'amayim, something like that?
Vayakveini li pa'amayim.
Vayakveinu li pa'amayim. He has twisted me. He's done me. He's. Why is the akev, the heel, called the akev? And the reason it's called the akev is because the heel is at a right angle. It's twisted. It's not straight. If your foot and your heel is straight, you've got a very, very peculiar foot. You won't be able to walk. You have to have it at a right angle. Yeah? And that is why the heel is called an akev, because it's not straight. So he says, Vayakveini li pamayim, he has twisted me. That word Vayakveini, the word that Yaakov, the name of Yaakov, Esav uses that word and says, yes, and now I know why you're called Yaakov, because you're a twister. You've twisted me twice now. You've taken my birthright, and now you've taken my bracha. So the word akev has got very negative connotations.
Is it from akum?
Akum, well, I thought that too, but I'm wondering why we haven't got a vav, vet. We've got a mem instead of vet. But you're right, akum means twisted. So we probably can connect it in some way. So here, in our verse in Tehillim, this is the negative connotation of the word akev. Tehillim, Art Scroll translates it using it as a nice literal translation. He raised his heel, akev. Why did he raise his heel? Why would you raise your heel on somebody? To stamp on them, to trample on them. And so what David HaMelech is saying here is, even my ally, I'm so alone, I'm in such trouble that even my friends, even somebody I considered an ally, who I trusted, I even gave him my food to eat. Even he has turned against me and trampled me with his heel. Now, the translation that I found here on the one that I like to use, the Chabad website, uses the word ambush, and he uses that because of Rashi. Rashi on this pasuk quotes a verse which we should know. When I say we, I mean those of us who have been attending my Tanakh shiur. Maybe not Howard because he joined late, but everybody else who's been coming to the Tanakh shiur might remember this. And Rashi reminds us, and he tells us that in the Sefer Yehoshua, in chapter 8, verse 13, which I'll show you in a moment, it talks about their ambush party on the west of the city. Now, let me show you the verse. Here it is. This is the story of Ai. The story of Ai. You'll remember that in the story of Ai, after they had conquered Jericho, they then went to try and conquer the city of Ai. And they failed at first because of Achan and taking the booty. And then afterwards, they were successful. And what they did was, and we mentioned it again in last week's Tanakh shiur, it was a tactic of a pincer movement. They drew out the people from Ai, and they had an ambush lying in wait to go behind them and cause a pincer movement. And this is what we were told in verse 13, Leon, verse 13 of chapter 8, I think it is, in Yehoshua.
That I haven't got ready.
Okay, well, while you're getting it ready, I'll tell you what our translation says. Our translation says, and the people set all the host that was in the north of the city and their liers in wait, the ambushers, on the west of the city. And Joshua went that night into the midst of the valley. Now, let's have a look what it says. Vayasimu ha'am et kol ha'machane asher mitzafon la'ir. They put all the army that was in the north of the city. Look over here. Ve'et akevo. And he translates it here, the liers in wait. In other words, the ambushers. There, that word akevo means ambush. And that is why Rashi comments on Tehillim when it says he raised his heel and trampled me, which is what Art Scroll says. He translates it according to Rashi that he ambushed. So we have a source for the word akev, a heel, being an ambush. So have you got it now, Leon? How does Art Scroll translate it?
Just say the chapter and verse again.
8:13 in Joshua, chapter 8.
13, yeah. The people readied the entire camp, which was to the north of the city, and the ambush party to the west. That night, Joshua went into the midst of the valley.
So there, interestingly, very interesting. Art Scroll translates Akevo here as ambush party, and in Tehillim, he translates it more literally as raised his heel to trample on me. Very interesting. So anyway, what's that got to do with our Gemarah? Not very much, except that it's one of the sayings that our fellow said. So Julia, when you disappeared off to answer the door, I answered your question and I said, you're right, it's nothing to do with it. It's one of our tangents. And we went off a tangent because the first of these sayings of our fellow was one of our psukim, the release of water causing strife. And that was his first saying. And then so the Gemarah said, oh, and by the way, he's got a whole bunch of other sayings as well. So you're quite right to point that out. Yes, Leon.
Going back to where we talked about the word ekev, I remember at Ulpan, when we first made Aliyah, we were given an example of this. We can't come to the party, ekev, the bad weather. So it was an expression of a problem, the bad aspect of the word.
Yeah, okay, that's very, very interesting. Ekev is quite a fancy word, really. It's sort of on account of. That's how I think you would translate it into English in the way you've said it. We couldn't go to the party on account of the bad weather. And it will be if you will listen, if on account of listening to the mitzvot. So it has that negative connotation there because it's as you said, it's causing a problem. Ekev is not a great word, which is why, of course, that when Yaakov reaches his peak of spiritual perfection, when he wrestles with the angel, and the Torah tells us that you wrestled with man and with God, vatuchal, and you prevailed, what happens to Yaakov? He gets a name change. It says, no longer shall you be called Yaakov, with those negative connotations of vayak veini li pamayim, you've twisted me twice. No longer shall you be called twister, but you shall be called Yisrael. Yisrael, which means the total opposite of Yaakov. Yashar El, straight with God. In other words, you are either Sar El, the Prince of God, or Yashar El, you are straight. And I like the idea Yashar El because it is the other side of the coin of Yaakov. And we said this before, but this is human nature, and it's the Jews' nature, and it's our job to turn Yaakov into Yisrael. Yaakov is referred to Yisrael when he is at a high madriga, and he's referred to Yaakov when he's not at such a high madriga. Our job
Johnny?
is to turn Yaakov into Yisrael.
It's Sharon. I thought I read that Yisrael meant God wrestler, someone who has wrestled with God. Is that different?
No,
And if not, then it would be the Ekebs that would be more appropriate than the Yisra.
No, you are right. The verse at that point does say you have struggled with man and God, and you have prevailed. David, what's the pasuk say exactly?
Ki sarita el Elokim vatuchal.
Right, ki sarita. And we translate that correctly, Sharon. That is translated in many of the translations because you have struggled, you fought with God and man, and you have prevailed. So the word sarita there is from and the idea of battling, but you're battling for the position of elevation. It's an idea of vatuchal, of prevailing, of being above, of being above it all. You've battled your own demons. Yaakov here at this point was battling his own conscience. Remember, he had taken the bracha of Esav, and this episode of fighting with this angel was occurring immediately before he was going to re-meet Esav. And he was battling with his conscience. What should he do? And he overcame his conscience, because what we see is after he had battled that conscience, he then goes to Esav at the beginning of Parshat Vayishlach, and he says, Kach et birchati, take my bracha, and he gives it him back, and he acknowledges that he has taken his bracha, and he gives it back. He says, Kach et minchati, take my offering, take my bracha, and he overcomes his conscience. And that is what makes him Yashar El. That is what makes him into Yisrael, as opposed to Yaakov. We are known as Bnei Yisrael and not Bnei Yaakov, because we want to aspire to being Bnei Yisrael, to being that madrega of the Jewish people, that level of the Jewish people which overcomes our natural tendency to be Yaakov, to be somebody who is perhaps a little tricky in our behavior. Okay, and we're going to have to stop there because I have to do other things, but it's a good place to stop. We didn't get as far as I thought we would, but never mind. We'll do a bit more next week. Next week, please God, we will have some more sayings. The next one that we're going to discuss is all about marital harmony. So you can give some thought to that. And then we eventually will get back to talking about the subject matter of the Gemarah, but not for quite some time yet. Okay, so before we go, any questions on what we've done today? Yes, Marcel.
It's not a question, it's just an apology about last night. We had a power cut and all the power went up in Renana.
Yes, I understood that. Howard was sat in shadows there. It was very very spiritual looking.
Well, I was using a computer which is plugged in, so I couldn't, and the Wi-Fi and everything went down.
Right, I think a lot of people had that problem, and there's been some power cuts in North Netanya as well today. So,
Johnny, I just want to say that you're magnificent always, but on a Tuesday particularly so.
Thank you very much.
They're just marvellous. And the other thing is, you'll be getting a letter from my lawyers for breach of copyright of the photograph of my mother-in-law before she left Yemen, with the thing on her head.
Okay. All right.